starting at 7 a.m. every day.
Hey guys, Rudder here. April 7th, 2020. Not sure if you can hear me. I'm in quarantine here in southern British Columbia, small town.
Imagine if you were in quarantine for the first time in your life, stuck in the same spot, not allowed to leave, except for once a week for a brief walk to the grocery store and back. And from 6:30 in the morning till 6:30 at night every day there was construction, mega construction, banging. Your entire house was vibrating and everything was so loud you can't even talk to your wife, and your child is constantly screaming because they can't sleep. Imagine how that starts to feel after a few days. Well, I've been going through it now for weeks, and this is a quiet moment. I'm recording this during a quiet moment, but the vibration and the noise has been so bad that I'm getting almost no sleep, and I already have insomnia. I have chronic pain, I have PTSD and all sorts of other issues which cause me to not be able to sleep very well. So right now, with this extra noise and a newborn as well, and of course the global economic collapse and quarantine, there's a lot of reasons why I'm not sleeping very well, and it's starting to weigh on me a little bit, I must say. I don't know if anyone else is having major construction like this outside their place right now, but it really isn't working out very well for us. And it seems very strange why so many things are in lockdown right now, and I'm barely even allowed to leave the house. There we go. Barely allowed to leave the house, but I have, I'm basically being tortured here. It feels like this is not something that you would do to a lab animal, doesn't it? Seems like just ridiculous. We sit here inside sometimes staring at each other, unable to hear anything, not able to talk, not able to communicate, not able to think, and completely sleep deprived, just looking at each other going, how long is this supposed to go? This is supposed to go till November, this project, and all they're doing is putting in a roundabout. They're turning a stupid straight piece of road into a roundabout. You go around in a circle for a second and then you go back on the regular road again. It's ridiculous. It's a make-work project, and it's destroyed any sense of peace around here. We are forced to be here in this quarantine. This is a very unique situation, and I don't think this has ever happened before, where all of humanity has been forced into quarantine, and a certain number of those people, the quarantine is not a good place to be. Right now, for me, I would really like to get out of here and go stay somewhere else or whatever, but I don't have the means, and I'm not even allowed. So, Medicaid and I are both disabled. I'm not asking for pity or anything, but this is our story. We're here, we're disabled, we can barely walk to the grocery store for food at the best of times, and it's a constant struggle to keep ourselves healthy and keep ourselves alive. And now with this quarantine, that's added additional stresses and additional limitations on us. The equipment in front of the house has stopped, so I'm glad I could get this quickly recorded. This is some garlic. It's looking dry out here, but the ground can't be that dry. Just the surface is dry. I think they're fine. I don't think they need watering. It's too early for that. Here's just another strain of garlic along this side. I think some of them have been bitten a little bit by snails or something. I'm going to have to watch out for that. I'm going to go inside for the rest of this video. Well, the construction's finally over, and it's time for the rest of day 23 of my lockdown diary. I usually go over some data and stories that I've been following lately, and what I've noticed today is there are now more than 82,000 dead worldwide. In Canada there are over 400, and there were 2,000 today in the USA for the first time. That's a milestone, unfortunately. 2,000 dead in one day. That's getting up there for sure. BC now is up to 43 dead, and we have a few more every day now. That's accelerating, but we are before a lot of other places on that exponential curve. So we get to see what other places are going through before we get there, and we're a couple of weeks behind what's going on in different parts of the US, and maybe 3 weeks behind hard hit places like Italy that are now coming down the other side. So it's definitely interesting to watch these numbers, and I'll put up on the screen a graphic and an article today that I saw about how we are ramping up here in BC, but not as fast as in Ontario and Quebec, who started off not quite as bad as BC. BC started off sort of one of the early hotspots in Canada, and then Ontario and Quebec have really caught up and surpassed us now. Not just in terms of number of dead, because they have a way more higher population, but in terms of like per capita, they are surpassing BC now. So something we're doing here in BC is different than they're doing over there, or maybe, you know, just the geography is different, the cities are different. We have a lot of small cities out in the middle of nowhere, and I think they have several larger cities over in Ontario and Quebec. And they're saying in BC now, we're not bothering with testing really anymore. We don't test people unless they're dead. In fact, we're not testing all the dead even. So the numbers are low. There are more deaths and definitely more cases than are being reported, definitely. The deaths are close to the total number. There may be a few more here and there that aren't being attributed to this illness, but for the most part, most deaths are getting attributed still. As things get busier, that apparently goes downhill. In New York, they're not even testing dead bodies anymore. If they assume it was the illness, they just mark it as not the illness. They don't count that. Unless they've actually tested for it. So a lot of the numbers are low. These death numbers are low. The case numbers are, they're just saying that the case numbers are garbage now. It doesn't matter. We've tested a certain number of people, and a certain percentage of those are ill, but really what matters is the percentage of the total population now. Because they're saying everybody's going to get it. Everybody on the planet is going to get it. Unless you're naturally immune, there's maybe 1 in 5 people or so that is naturally immune or has already had various coronaviruses and won't get this coronavirus. But for the most part, everyone's going to get exposed. Everyone's going to get it. Deaths are a little bit harder to be fake in either direction. So that's why I've been following that number a lot more, and it does seem to be quite a reliable number, as these numbers are coming in from all over the world, all different sources, literally hundreds or thousands of different sources, and anything that doesn't match with other sources is being discarded, and this all being collated by a lot of different groups, and this is sort of a free market of data that's coming out, I believe. This isn't just official numbers off of a government website or something. So we're seeing data from all over, from all kinds of people, all kinds of groups, all kinds of institutions, all kinds of universities and labs. That's why I'm following the death data a little bit more. It's a little bit more of an indicator right now than cases or any of the other numbers. In Ontario, they say they're now predicting 3,000 to 15,000 deaths, which is on the higher side of that is about 1 in 1,000 people. Not 1 in 1,000 infected, 1 in 1,000 people that live in an area. So if Ontario has a certain number of people, that means they'll get 1 in 1,000 of those will die from this. And they're saying it could have been a lot worse. That's taking into account all the social distancing and other isolation and lockdowns and such that we're under here. But yeah, about 1 in 1,000 in Ontario, they're saying, in about the next year. And Quebec's now also said, yes, also about 1 in 1,000. But like they said, it could have been a lot worse. That's if we continue with the social distancing that we've been doing. And just some more numbers on that. Quebec has 8.5 million people, and Ontario has 14.7 million people. And in Quebec, they're saying about 1,200 to 9,000 people will die. And in Ontario, they're saying between 3 and 15,000. So yeah, like I said, those numbers work out. On the high side, those work out to about 0.1%, or 1 death out of 1,000 citizens. And that doesn't sound like too much, but remember, that is considering all the lockdowns and everything that we're doing. That's still going to be a significant number of people in Canada. 1 in 1,000 kicking the bucket all in 1 year. That's in addition to all other causes of death. This is in addition to any other normal cause of death. So yeah, and remember, these numbers are exponential. So for example, we have 38 million people living in Canada right now, and so far there's about 380 dead. If that's 1 in 1,000 Canadian dies, then there will be 38,000. And that's down from, of course, 38 million. So 1 in 1,000 dies, you get 38,000 dead. And like I said, we're about 380 or 400, so we're about just over 1% of the way to that total that they're sort of expecting, or maybe expecting. We're about 1% of the way. So that's what exponential growth is like. Exponential growth is like 95% of a move happens in, say, the final 5% of the time. So you could be very close to the end of things and not notice it by looking at how many deaths have actually happened at this point. You have to be able to look at exponential curve and look at those numbers and chart where that's going. And if we do that, we can see the total deaths in the world are continuing to increase exponentially. Yesterday and over the weekend was a little bit of a lull. I think that's just the numbers don't report as much on the weekends is what's happening. So today, Monday was worse, and then Tuesday today was really bad, was the worst day ever for deaths. So now you can see on your screen the logarithmic scale. And I was having to draw in the 1 million line myself, but now the site that I'm following that charts this data is now putting the 1 million there themselves, because we are obviously approaching that, unfortunately, approaching that 1 million dead number, which if we continue at current exponential rate of growth, we will reach this month in April, at the end of April, somewhere around the 29th or 30th, according to my calculations, and I've been doing those calculations for a while, and that number continues to be the same. It is going to be the end of this month that we hit 1 million deaths, and people keep on saying that 1 million deaths, we've only had a few thousand deaths. No, it's been creeping up. You haven't been watching. It's 82,000 today, over that, and more all the time, thousands and thousands more all the time. And so we're about to hit that 100,000 that I said we would hit by, I think Thursday I said we would hit. It's Tuesday today. Yeah, I think we will hit that about Thursday. So we're pretty much on track exactly as expected, and I don't take any credit for that. This is just math. These are just the numbers and the graphs. This is very simple grade 12 mathematics, and that's how exponential growth works, and we are on path for 1 million dead. I'm sorry to report that, and that's coming this month. So it would be great to see that curve turn downward, but it hasn't happened yet. People were saying yesterday, oh, it looks like it's cooling off. But no, it's actually worse than ever right now. It's the worst it has been. So we are on track for that million dead this month. And then soon we'll be talking about that next line up, which is the 10 million dead. And we really need to prevent that from happening, because if you lose 10 million people all of a sudden, that's like plague proportions. That's mass graves. That's the living going through hell, dealing with the dead, basically. We don't want to get to 10 million or 100 million dead. We really don't want to do that. We really, really don't. So I'm glad that we are continuing with these social distancing measures, although I know, and I feel it myself, that the tension is there, the desire to break free from that is there, and to demand that an end for that is there, or just to ignore it and to go back to life and do whatever you can as much as possible. But the time for that is not now. The time for that is not quite yet. Not in terms of logistics, and we don't have the numbers for that yet, and not in terms of health-wise. It's just not a good idea yet. We are coming upon the worst time here in Canada, the worst week, maybe this week or the next week, or maybe the week after. It depends on how flat we've flattened that curve. If it does take a little longer, that actually kind of is a good thing, unfortunately. But as soon as we feel that we have peaked, I'm going to be calling for, and I hope everyone else will be calling for, an end to the lockdown, or at least a relaxing of the lockdown. As we come down from the peak, we need to be coming down from all these measures that have been put in place until all of them are gone. We can't live under this tyranny that we live under now in this condition. This has to be temporary, and I've been saying that all along. It must be temporary. So thank you for everybody that continues their efforts out there. On behalf of myself, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me and my family, thank you. We're doing our part here. And as a nurse, not registered now, of course, but as a nurse that is trained in healthcare and prevention of diseases and infections and all these things, I have learned this, and I've lived this, and I've gone through 10 years of nursing, and I did that. I lived that life, and I believe that this is truly a health crisis. It really is. And I'm glad to see that people are taking it seriously for the most part. And now we can move on to what's going on in China. They say that they have no cases, no new cases, no infections. Almost everybody's recovered, and they've ended the lockdown in Wuhan. So that was today. There was some travel restrictions that were eased recently, but it was actually the lockdown, the full lockdown today, and so they can leave the province, leave the city. There's still various regional lockdowns and various quarantines in effect. There's a lot of layers of government in China, apparently. But they are reporting no new cases, no infections, no deaths. The rest of the world is almost totally locked down, living totally locked down, but China is free to go, I guess. They're moving about and much less lockdown anyway than before, and no cases, no deaths, nothing. So I don't know, the numbers I'm pretty sure are completely fake. It's bizarre what's going on there, and we know that their media has been corrupt and that their internet is almost separate from ours in a lot of cases, and information doesn't flow very well from China or from North Korea and certain other places. But yeah, something is very bizarre about that, very bizarre. It doesn't really make sense that they could be ending quarantine, getting back to work, everything back to normal over here, and they're saying no new cases, but the rest of the world is in complete lockdown and suffering thousands of deaths constantly. I don't understand what's going on there, and that story has yet to be completely told and yet to be unraveled, I guess. There's some mysteries in there. If you have ideas about it, I'd be interested to hear in the comments section. And speaking of that, I might as well now say hi to YouTube, to Library, and to BitChute, the 3 video platforms that I've been relying on to update my followers with what's going on here in my life and this data and the stories that I follow. So thank you guys very much, and thanks to all the supporters and followers on those platforms. And now another interesting story, going from China now, talking about masks. They're saying, in the West here, only Asians and Caucasians, fair-skinned people, I guess, will have to cover their face in public. So now this new decision, they've changed their mind, now saying that masks are important to be wearing. So for the past 3 months they've been saying, don't wear masks, don't wear masks. And wait a second, now they're saying, actually you should be wearing masks, that's what prevents the spread. So, okay, now everyone has to scramble to try and get masks, and there aren't any apparently, so people are making their own, and that apparently has its own problems, because just putting cloth over your face doesn't really protect you or anyone else from viruses or bacteria or anything. That actually can be a real cause of problems. So, but yeah, now the Black and Latino community of the US especially is afraid of racism if they wear masks, because historically, this is what I gather, historically Black and Latino people sometimes have been characterized as wearing bandanas on their faces. I don't know if that's true that they do wear that, or if, I mean I've seen that, but I don't know if that's just a stereotype or what. But anyway, they believe that if they wear any kind of masks or coverings on their faces other than the very official looking ones, which we're being told not to wear, save that for the hospital, if they wear anything other than those very official looking ones, that they will get attacked or be a subject of racism. So it's being talked about basically that Black and Latino people will be exempt from this rule. So that leaves only really Asians and Caucasian, well, Middle Easterners, but they already can decide for themselves if they choose to cover their faces in public. So basically now it's just the Asian population and the Caucasian population really that has to cover their face. And that seems kind of like, I'm not going to say it's racist, but, well, it is racist. But what it really is it's divisive. This is division, right? We don't need to be dividing people up based on what color their faces are, what width their noses are, how big their whatevers are, the different parts of the body, and these things that we say, well, that's a Black person, that's a Latino person, that's a Caucasian person, that's a Chinese, that's an Asian person, or whatever. However we want to divide people up on this planet. And it's division is what it is. I mean, yes, we are different, and that's great to celebrate our differences, I think. But also, we are one. We are one life force. We are one race. We are one species. So this mask thing, it seems to be, it's going to be a big issue, whether or not masks are basically going to become a part of human clothing from now on. Are we going to be wearing masks? I don't know. But there does seem to be a sort of a racial or whatever divisiveness there that's already starting, and I think that we need to sort of try to avoid that happening. we are all one, and we are going to have to face this all together. And I'm going to leave it there for today. Thanks for watching, and stay healthy.